For 50 years, you've been told a storm slew the Edmund Fitzgerald's 29 crewmen, but that's not the truth. What if the real cause was buried in Coast Guard files and ignored maintenance logs? You're here because you suspect official reports don't tell the whole story, and you want the truth uncovered. Today, we'll dig into evidence hidden for decades, exposing a cover-up that turned tragedy into a convenient myth. We'll trace the Fitzgeralds' proud history, reveal overlooked warning signs, reconstruct her final hours, and break down why the official narrative was never the full truth. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel Spark Science, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. In the late 1950s, the Great Lakes shipping industry was in the midst of a golden age. Steel consumption was strong, the economy was hot, and businesses were vying to construct larger, faster, and more efficient ships to corner the iron ore market. When the Edmund Fitzgerald was launched in 1958, she was more than another freighter, she was a declaration. At 729 feet in length, she was the largest vessel to travel the Great Lakes inland seas, and to most, a marvel of engineering that floated. Owned by the Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company and chartered to the Columbia Transportation Division of Oglebay Norton, the Fitzgerald soon became the crown jewel of the Great Lakes. Her own name commanded respect. Edmund Fitzgerald, who was the president of the company, personally took pride in the ship, attending her christening and seeing her regularly. Executives were not shy to display her record-breaking accomplishment to clients and reporters equally. The Fitzgerald could haul more than 26,000 tons of taconite pellets, the most of any vessel on the lakes, and did so with a charm that earned her the affection of captains and crew. In those initial years, she established record cargo for seasons, frequently ending the shipping season as the highest hauler on the lakes. The vessel also possessed a personality. During her first captain, Peter Pulser, the Fitzgerald earned respect not just for speed and efficiency but also for showmanship. Pulser would play music over the ship's public address system, pumping up the crew and entertaining passing vessels. During transits through the locks, he would bellow trivia and interesting facts through a bullhorn to his fans, making the ship a floating spectacle as well as a freighter. Natives along her route came to recognize the outline of her on the horizon, and kids would dash to the beach just to see her pass by. The Fitzgerald was more than merely a workplace for the men who navigated her, it was a source of pride. Stewards boasted themselves to produce the best cuisine in the fleet. Plain deckhands bragged about the ship's smooth motion in big seas. The officers adored her responsiveness and the command she presented. She was constructed to labor hard for many years. Lots of people thought she would be carting or long into the 21st century. The Fitzgerald was deemed too heavy and too powerful to ever really be at risk. She had weathered massive storms in the past and had ridden through them with little damage. Captains and sailors became increasingly certain that regardless of the size of the waves or the gale-force wind, the Fitzgerald would survive. Her spotless safety record in her first decade on the sea solidified this image. Every successful transit only served to enhance her aura of invincibility. That image wasn't limited to the sailors on board. It reached beyond the shipping companies, insurance agencies, and the general public. She was turned into a marketing tool, a living testament to the stability and power of Great Lakes trade. And when a ship is regarded as unsinkable, the will is to drive her harder. Schedules are made tighter, turnarounds at port are cut shorter, and minor maintenance is neglected because there is always another cargo to be delivered. The Fitzgerald was a symbol of efficiency, but efficiency is not always secure. Looking back, that pride bred a lethal blind spot. That pride of the American side made it more difficult for anyone to believe that she could be actually in trouble. The hints were ignored, and minor issues minimized because she had always managed to get through. The myth of her strength started overtaking the reality of her state. Under the paint and burnished veneer, cracks, literal and figurative, had started to appear. They were slight, almost imperceptible, but they existed. In the choppy waters of the Great Lakes, even small weaknesses could be deadly. Nobody assumed that the same characteristics that made her a legend would also leave her exposed. Underneath the shining steel hull and well-oiled facade of the Edmund Fitzgerald was a reality the public never knew, a ship starting to reveal her age in the ways that counted most when the lake became deadly. She was outwardly still the pride of the fleet, but the men who worked her decks and cared for her upkeep knew she wasn't perfect. During the years preceding her last trip, little but vital issues had arisen, and not all of them were being tackled with the same urgency they demanded. As with every freighter that sails the Great Lakes, the Fitzgerald weathered ice in winter and heat in summer, as well as constant flexing of her hull in heavy seas. This constant punishment strained her framework, causing weld cracks, corrosion on joints, and deck fittings losing tightness. Such wear was normal, but the distinction came in how owners responded to making repairs. For a vessel carrying record-weight cargoes, every day out of dry dock was a day not earning money, so repairs that could be postponed were postponed. Crewmen increasingly complained about ongoing maintenance problems, including vents that leaked when it rained heavily, hatch covers that did not seal reliably, and equipment patched rather than replaced. These issues were recorded, but frequently ignored. To a passing glance, the Fitzgerald appeared immaculate. But to experienced mariners, these patches and band-aids spoke volumes, insidious neglect. The Fitzgerald's huge hull also needed special attention. Its enormity made it sag severely in turbulent seas, risking loss of structural integrity if not monitored carefully. The Coast Guard had made recommendations to strengthen hatch covers on such ships, but modifications were costly. Some companies responded quickly, others, such as the operators of the Fitzgerald, procrastinated. Fierce competition in shipping during the 1970s and owners' desire to maximize productivity led to the neglect of maintenance. Each idle day in port was lost revenue. Safety was not neglected, but inspections sometimes became an exercise in ticking boxes, with the aim to return the vessel to work as quickly as possible. Delays that could be scheduled for the off-season often were. Maintenance records for the pre-November 1975 months referred to corrosion, flooding of compartments, and other issues. Separately, these weren't disastrous, but together in the wrong circumstances, they were lethal. The Fitzgerald had also suffered groundings in earlier years in her service life. While no official structural damage was noted, these events can stress a ship in insidious manners, the consequences of which may not be seen until it's tested to its limits. To the outside world, she was pristine, her reputation untarnished. But those near operations understood that she was not as invincible as her reputation. The cracks were not just in her steel, but in the system prioritizing speed and profit over care and caution. The storm might have struck abruptly, yet the seeds of catastrophe were sown well ahead of her departure from port. November 9, 1975, dawned uneventfully. The Edmund Fitzgerald rested at anchor in Superior, Wisconsin, carrying more than 26,000 tons of taconite pellets destined for Zug Island outside Detroit. Weather forecasts called for only moderate conditions, nothing out of the ordinary for late-season navigation. Captain Ernest M. McSorley, a veteran of more than 4 decades at sea, had run this route many times before. At 2:15 p.m., the Fitzgerald gently left the dock and set her bow toward the open lake. The risk wasn't in what the crew did know, but what they didn't. Only 5 hours into the journey, the National Weather Service revised its forecast. A low-pressure system was intensifying and changing course, now projected to sweep across Lake Superior with gale-force winds and huge waves. It came too suddenly for most ships to make changes. McSorley changed direction toward the Canadian coast, anticipating some shelter. In theory, the plan was good, but it would take her on a more circuitous route still subject to deteriorating weather. By evening, the winds howled over 50 knots and waves rose over 10 feet. Other vessels saw decks iced up as spray froze immediately in the cold air. The Fitzgerald continued on, her bow laboring with each roll. By 2:45 the next day, snow had cut visibility to almost zero. McSorley called the SS Arthur M. Anderson, 10 miles back, with damage report, "I have a rail fence down, 2 vents lost or damaged, and a list." The vessel was listing, water had gotten in somewhere, and vents had been breached, all red flags. McSorley urged the Anderson to keep close. At 7:10 p.m., the Anderson phoned again, providing navigational assistance and inquiring as to the status of the Fitzgerald. McSorley's response became legendary: "We are holding our own." Radar contact was lost only minutes later. There was no signal of distress. The Fitzgerald just disappeared. To the Anderson's crew, it was a chilling surprise. They had been tracking a ship thought to be unsinkable, and it had vanished in minutes. The storm had taken her by surprise. Captain McSorley was no madman. By 1975, he was getting close to retirement age, respected for his ability and level head. But he, like many captains, pushed hard to finish runs regardless of weather. On the lakes, reputation equaled reliability, on-time delivery of cargo. That had been his attitude and it had served him fine, but this storm was another thing entirely. By the afternoon, he knew his vessel was in trouble. The tilt, the crushed vents, these could be deadly in these conditions. Yet he continued, only 17 miles from port. But in seas like these, 17 miles could be considered 170. His was a stark decision: lose speed and risk being smashed helplessly about by the gale, or keep going and pray to be safe ahead of it. He opted for speed. Every wave crashed the hull with increasing force, each blow piling on the damage. Pride, reputation, and pressure at the end of the season clung to his judgment. On the Great Lakes, captains operated by an informal code: you got your ship and crew back in time. But what McSorley may not have realized was just how compromised the Fitzgerald already was. If water had begun flooding the holds, each mile worsened the danger. When he radioed, "We're holding our own," it was less a reassurance than a fragile truth masking the ship's desperate condition. Minutes into the night, something disastrous, a rogue wave, a structural collapse, or an unexpected deluge, completed what years of inattention had initiated. The Fitzgerald was lost, along with all 29 of its crew.